It's time to use music as a primary source. We've studied the Great Migration. Let's put a soundtrack to that history. And to do that, we need to now take a look at the music analysis tool. Because we're going to ask you to analyze a song by one of the African American musicians that we mentioned during the Great Migration. A song by James Reese Europe or W.C. Handy, or one of the stride pianists, Lucky Roberts, James P. Johnson, Willie the Lion Smith. We're going to use the music analysis tool, and you're going to post your analysis having used that tool. You will then respond to a peer's analysis using the rubric provided, and you'll post your review. Then we're going to ask you to respond to some questions. Why should music be used as a primary source? And we're going to ask you to think about how you might use music effectively in a lesson using this music analysis tool. Hopefully you're always thinking about these exercises that we're having you do and how they would help you use the arts and music and literature as primary sources to enhance and enrich your students' study of history. The music analysis tool is simply a guide to help you analyze music. You are probably scared to death now about how am I going to do this? I'm a history teacher. I have very little musical background, but I found that by using this tool, you can really learn a lot about music, and yes, you too can describe it, analyze it, and interpret the music. The musical selection that we did a model on for this presentation is Non-Patrol in No Man's Land. This is a piece written by James Reese Europe, one of our African American composers from the Great Migration. I hope you remember him. He was the leader of the Harlem Hellfighters Band. Remember, he had migrated from Alabama to Washington, D.C., where he lived near John Philip Sousa, and eventually settled in New York City. This is the man who, while in New York City, was the founder and director of the Clef Club, this amazing symphony orchestra of African Americans who were classically trained in symphonic music. They appeared often at Carnegie Hall and then toured Europe. As a result, they first recorded in 1913. But also remember that while he was in New York, James Reese Europe wrote dance music for Vernon and Irene Castle. World War I interrupted his career in New York City. He enlisted in 1917, early on commissioned as a lieutenant. He will lead his 369th U.S. Infantry Hellfighters into battle, but also is the leader of the Black Military Band, which is composed of former Clef Club members, and it was while he was in the hospital after having been in a battle and suffering from a gas attack that he composed On Patrol in No Man's Land. In 1919, it will be published. The band, which has traveled all throughout Europe, particularly the UK and France, has brought jazz, ragged music, ragtime, to not only troops, but also French civilian. Once they come back to the United States, they are a sensation, and they will tour American cities, providing numerous opportunities for band members, and they will be recorded. Remember that Europe suffers a tragic early death when he is attacked by a fellow band member. U.B. Blake and Noble Sissle wrote the lyrics to On Patrol in No Man's Land. Remember, they're the first famous African-American songwriting team. They are the first African-Americans to produce vaudeville and Broadway shows, and they were members of the Clef Club and the Harlem Hellfighters. Let's take a look at the music analysis tool. Okay, so when we take a look at the music analysis tool, you'll see that we're asking students to think like historians. Before we even play the CD, play the Spotify account, we are going to describe this music using historical context. We are asking them to consider the source. So, we describe the music, we got the title, the date, events that are happening at the time that this piece is recorded and written, the recording company, who is the composer, and we've got to know something about this composer. Now, remember that we suggest that you listen to the music twice. So, the first time you hear the music, you should be describing the music. For the sake of time, right now, we're going to play a clip from On Patrol in No Man's Land. To hear this piece in its entirety, just go to the Spotify playlist, An American Tale, which is on the course website. Let's listen to a clip of On Patrol in No Man's Land. Okay, now let's describe that piece of music. Okay, the type of music it is of course, it's ragtime, early jazz with, I hope you heard, a touch of Tin Pan Alley. The instruments that you heard were trumpets, drums, clarinets, tuba, and percussion. Oh yes, there were vocals. They were done in English. But oh my goodness, was that surreal? To hear that vaudevillian Tin Pan Alley song, the music as the bombs were dropping, the rockets were being fired, the directions were being given to the troops. It was absolutely surreal. When I first heard it, I could not believe what I was hearing. I was totally captivated, totally intrigued. Okay, so once you have described the music, now you're going to analyze it. Play the music again. You're going to have to because it's really complex. And when you play the music the second time, now we're going to ask you to analyze the music using musical terms. These happen to be the musical terms that I found most compelling in the music. You can find many others, I'm sure, by using the Jazz Glossary created at Columbia University. We've got the URL listed for you there. Remember, you're analyzing how the term was used in the music and why it was used in the music. Of course, there were lyrics. So now we've got to also take a look at words or phrases and analyze what those words or phrases mean and why they were used in the piece. Now, lyrics can be found oftentimes at this website that you now see the URL on the guide, www.azlyrics.com. Also, when you're analyzing the music, we're asking you to link the music to the historical context. How does the music inform what's going on? If there's a video performance available, that's very cool to use too. Unfortunately, there is not one. We didn't have video performance of Reese doing this piece. But later music in the 20th century does have performances available, particularly on YouTube. All right, the next thing after describing and analyzing, we now want you to interpret the music. We want you to establish the motivation and purpose. What's the message of this piece? What was Reese trying to do? And you've got to use specific references from the music. We hope this is a good model for you to use. Then audience. Determine who was the intended audience. based on what you know about the historical context of this piece and your analysis of this piece. Let's then evaluate the impact or effectiveness of the composer's message. You've got to use specific references from the music in historical context. Did the piece do what the composer wanted it to do? And then lastly, what was the most memorable or powerful aspect of this piece for you? And please, you must use evidence from the piece of music to justify your selection. As with all of our exercises, we have a rubric. This is the Music Analysis Tool rubric. As you'll note, we're looking for the quality of the analysis using the Music Analysis Tool based in information on the historical context and on the composer, how you described the music. Is the description fully described? The analysis of the music, you've got to use at least 3 musical terms. You've got to analyze at least 3 or 4 song lyrics. Again, how it's used in the music, why it's used in the music. Then accurately state how this piece of music reflects the times it was written in, that you're able to state the purpose with evidence from the music and the time period. Also, you're evaluating the effectiveness, always based in evidence, and you've been able to identify a memorable or powerful piece and you've defended it. There's lots of great music from the Great Migration. We hope that the Music Analysis Tool will allow you to introduce this wonderful music to your students. Enjoy the music of the Great Migration.